Then there was this clamour last year for a national inquiry on grooming gangs, rape gangs, really, is what they are. And Starmer said that it was part of being weaponised by people on the far right. He later clarified that, but in the first form that he said it was pretty general and he was pretty dismissive. So then he said, well, look, they sort of palmed it off to Louise Casey and said, all right, well, Louise Casey's going to look into it because they had to do something because it was a real media shitstorm. And I think at that point they thought, well, there's no way Louise is going to call for a national inquiry because she's saying she doesn't want a national inquiry. Then lo and behold, on Saturday night, Baroness Casey goes, I think we should have a national inquiry. And at that point, Starmer, look, I don't like what he did or how he handled it, but he must have gone, Jesus Christ, can I not get a fucking break at this point? I mean, she literally, the only reason I gave her this because she said, it was nakedly political why they gave it to her, right? Because they thought, well, she definitely won't ask for one. And now we got one. I mean, it's a bit, just before we get into the more delicate elements of it, politically, there's something very Boris-like about these last two things where you do the wrong thing for as long as possible, and then when you do the right thing, no one gives you any credit.
Well, I suppose there's two parts of this story. One is the sort of the intricacies of grooming gangs, and obviously, there's some awful stories at the heart of that. And then also, as you say, there's the sort of political impact of it. And I think it's not surprising that Starmer's done this because it's exactly as you say. It's because they've lost all control of what they're doing. They've lost control of don't the political people say lost control of the narrative or whatever, which is a wanky way of going.
The message.
Yeah. So there's barely any enthusiasm for Starmer now. And so now he's forced into these U-turns because he does the thing, particularly with winter fuel, we're going to look tough. That's it. That'll make us popular. I think that at some point they all believe that. That'll make everybody think, look, we're prepared to be tough and not give in to the left. But didn't understand that would just make people go, what the fuck have we voted for you for then? And I think this is another example.
I mean, with this, inquiry, there are people on either sides of an extreme argument that are not good faith actors. There always will be. But the point of an inquiry, right, has always been to say, has there been a particular issue here where people in vulnerable positions were let down to the point where people need to be held legally accountable and that we need to learn lessons? And I think that this quite obviously satisfies that. It did, I know that Elon Musk pushing for it, put him in a difficult spot. But the point was, it was a legitimate call. I mean, you look at these councils, some of them were talking about the actions of 14-year-old girls like they were fully grown women rather than children. There's a lot. The fact that this is always the thing in this country, is the lack of people. When something goes horribly wrong, the lack of people that lose their job is astonishing. Yeah. Even when it gets to the right, so you give it 30 years, you finally get the inquiry. There are hard lessons to be learned. And rarely do those hard lessons seem to involve anyone doing time, losing their jobs, being made to pay fines. So this happening, but it's just happened at a point where the way that the public will remember it is that he didn't want to do it and he was bounced into it. Whereas if he'd have actually taken control of the narrative last summer, it could have been seen as a positive thing. But I guess that is the last thing that Keir Starmer would ever do, is sort of seize something by the scruff of its neck.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's exactly right. And I think I don't really see the harm in, other than the cost of it and so on. But then that's what people always say, isn't it? Is the cost of this, over Bloody Sunday or over the Chilcot inquiry or whatever. Oh, it's done now. What the British people want is to get on and move on. And
has any phrase what I think the British people want now? Rachel Reeves was in front of the cameras, and it was being put to her quite forcefully. It was like, well, you basically very hostile to people that called for a national inquiry into grooming gangs. Now, do you think now that you could say that you would apologise to people? Because it is quite a difference in messaging. And she went, look, I think what the British public want, it's for you to maybe concede that you were a bit hubristic last summer, and you lumped everybody calling for an inquiry into some sort of far right cabal.
When you've made a mistake, you're like a court, the bank robber. I think what the British people want is to move on, is to put the sawn-off shotgun away, and to just hang on, you blasted someone in the face and said, fill the sack up with gold. I think what's in the past is in the past. It's so infuriating. Now, here's the thing. I wonder whether, if they just didn't do that, if they went, look, if Keir Starmer went, I'll be honest with you, we've made a mistake here. We underestimated the scale of it. It's not something that, and I certainly, if he said what you just said, when Louise Casey recommended an inquiry, I'll be honest with you, I thought,
can I not get a fucking break? You know what I mean?
Jesus,
and I won't lie, Elon was popping off last year, wasn't he? He was giving it all that. He's had a pop at Jess Phillips. She's one of my girls. You know what I mean? He's emasculated me. He's mugged off the whole party. Yeah, I lost my head. I won't lie, I lost my head. And that's
what we need. We need Danny Dyer as Prime Minister. Oh, he's fucking mugged me right off. Oh, buddy, and look at her.
Head, mate. I lost my fucking head. I said, Elon, you're not coming over here. Don't even live in this fucking country, you know. Yeah, go.
She's a baroness, right? Posh bird, like fucking giving it that. I thought she'll fucking come up. And I'll tell you what, though, she
fucking promised me. I asked her. She promised me. She said I won't call for, and then she fucking calls. Hey, look, fair play to her. You know, she's very good at what she does. Put me in a right dodgy position. Bit of honesty.
Then suddenly, Keir Starmer is back up to 62%, and it is. This is why. This is why Corbyn outdid all expectations briefly, you know, in that sort of year or so around the 2017 election. I think it's partly why Farage does as well as he does. It's why so many people say he's an ordinary bloke, even though that's clearly a massive fraud. But he's an ordinary bloke in that he does talk a little bit more like that. And people think, all right, you know, I could have a pint with him, where you really, really, really wouldn't want a pint with Rachel Reeves.
Rachel Reeves, I was saying after the Spelling Review that everything she says sounds like a chastisement, even if it's positive. Like if she'd have come in like yesterday, she'd have gone, I just want to say Happy Father's Day, Mark. Happy Father's Day. And I just wanted to thank you for everything you've done. You go, why do I feel like I'm on the fucking naughty step? We'll move on to talk about the G7 now. So first up, just a reminder who's in the G7. We are in it. Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom and the US. I think Italy have done well, haven't they, to be in there just on population and economy size.
A bit like in the Six Nations rugby.
It is.
Italy sneaks in. Every year they get beaten 73-0 by everyone.
Canada as well, not a huge population size there, but yeah, we're in the G7 for now. I don't know, you know, I would imagine we were G1 at one point. And
can you get relegated?
There's like a conference G League, and that is like Holland and Belgium are in that. Good league though, really competitive league.
West Ham won it one year.
West Ham win it once every 40 years. But what's interesting to note is that the populations of all those 7 countries that I mentioned are collectively still smaller than China. So I think it's interesting. Wow. You know, the G7 right? Both meaningful, but it is kind of like a sphere of Western influence. I would say Australia might have a claim there, might have to expand it. A bit like Eurovision, get the Aussies in, you know, yes. a bit of spice. But you know, as we sort of alluded to earlier, there's already a lot of bad stuff happening, and I just don't know. It must be interesting at this G7 because there must be stuff that would usually be on the G7 agenda that they've just got. Look, time we just can't do that this week. You go, but there is a war there. You go, yeah, but look at the other wars that are happening. And they are much more high profile, a lot more eyeballs. They're doing much better business on the socials. Your Sudan thing, really sorry. I swear to God, I swear down next time. Put it on the minutes. We're doing Sudan next time. I mean, I try not to have too much sympathy for politicians, but like you said earlier, maybe they're just, this is what they live for. Maybe like even saying G7 gives them a hard on in the same way that, you know, when they call a Cobra meeting, that's what they live for, is to just say, we've had an extraordinary meeting of Cobra and a supplementary gathering of the hard-on coalition. I mean, do you have any sympathy for them meeting up at this time?
Not really, because it shouldn't be that difficult, really. I mean, to take a moral stance, it should be easy to go. We are by and large pretty much vehemently opposed to the leader of a country that's the biggest in the world invading another country, shelling the shit out of places and saying this bit is now ours.
Well, Starmer got attracted some criticism at the weekend because he was, again, saying very little. And he was talking about graveness a lot. He was like, we are gravely concerned about the grave escalation of the grave and the gravy. And we put gravy on the escalating gravy in the gravy situation. And he was just sort of like, this guy wants to fucking soft shoe shuffle throughout his time in office, saying
that.
basically...
You've got that. I've been trying to get that and I can't. That's very good.
Well, there's different things of Starmer. Like there's kind of the angry one that speaks a bit more like Rachel Reeves. But one thing about Starmer actually on the socials is there was a clip doing around of him during the spending review sitting behind Rachel Reeves. And a lot of people were saying like the Gen Z, they think everyone's on the gear. They're like, he's doing gear, bruv. He's clearly doing gear because he was gurning a little bit. And he was, but I think it was much more likely to be a panic attack.
It'd be brilliant if it turned out it was though.
I mean, Keir Starmer could almost do anything that he's currently not doing and it would make people like him more. So if he was having a little key bump, just behind Rachel Reeves' shoulder, I think the Gen Z would, because they like people being their authentic selves, don't they? So look at that, mate.
Yeah,
Man don't give a fuck. Well, if he did have a panic attack, that would probably be humanise him a bit because that's probably the only logical response to everything that's happening.
Oh, and then he did a thing about his mental health and how it was,
that's good. He could do a piece of camera where he could just go like, guys, it's the first time I really spoke about this, but actually being in quite a difficult place.
And I think that I need to just take maybe one day off a week to help me grow, to help me express my own needs, and set boundaries. And I think when Rachel speaks to me, sometimes when Donald Trump speaks to me, I think I have to set my own boundaries. And
I'm seeing a lot of hate in the comments, guys, as I'm talking here. This is the problem. If he did like a live, he went live,
yeah.
And then just randomly went, oh yeah, actually the shirt is from Savile Row. Thanks. Just responded to the question in the comments there. And one thing I thought about one thing I thought about all the problems in the world, right, is have you ever had this fantasy where the news is depressing, right? Have you ever had this fantasy where you thought, how is there a way that I could live where I wouldn't need to know about the news, right? So I always call it the wigwam fantasy, where I just go and live in a wigwam in North Wales. And then I think, how much of what's relevant would get to me? And I was trying to think, how would it? I reckon it would be eventually, if I was like subsistence farming, there'd be a spike in the price of seeds.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's a great philosophical debate, yeah.
The wigwam dilemma. I just called it just now.
Yeah. No, there'd be something, wouldn't there? There'd be, yes, because people always say that. Does it affect my life, what's going on in Ukraine? Well, obviously it does because of the energy prices go up and so on. And so your energy prices would still go up, but you'd just be thinking, I wonder why I'm paying £470 a day to boil an egg. And not know. Although the energy companies, that's a fraud anyway, isn't it? We've had to put them up by 90% because of the effects of the Franco-Prussian War. They
don't mind a reason. The old one with the petrol prices, just how quickly they go up. You go, I'm fairly sure that the petrol you bought then, it's going to take a while for it to get to the pumps. I'm sure. Look, email in what most people think uk@gmail.com if there is a delayed pricing strategy, but it doesn't feel like it. And even if you do tell me the correct answer, I just want to feel like that's the case and I want to stick with my.
But no, it's a really, really brilliant question. I can imagine that being a great sort of philosophical debate. At what point, where in the world? Because everywhere in the world you would find it eventually. You think in sort of the 12th century or whatever, you wouldn't know what the world news was. You wouldn't know far less about, I don't know, the Hanseatic League or whatever was causing things that we know now. If you lived in the middle of Wessex or something, but there would be an impact at some point, not least of which because a big load of marauding Danes, past that, wasn't it? Whoever it was that Saxons come marching through and Normans. And
why are we suddenly speaking so much French? Do you not hear about Hastings, mate?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm in a wigwam, mate. I don't know. Yeah. Well,
bad news travels fast.
Yeah. William the Conqueror was going to set up he was very much opposed to setting up an inquiry into the marauding gangs, but he's changed his mind. He's lost all his popularity. We quite liked him when he came. At least he wasn't bloody Saxon.
Yeah, well, no, but he sent out a little guy there was a town crier the other day, and he was saying that the reason they've changed their mind is because the hard work the government have done turning around the economy. I'm surprised Labour didn't say that in the end. With the reason we're able to call this grooming is because we've fixed the foundations, where they just get confused on their own bullshit radar.